So, dear colleagues, if we are heard, let's begin our section, which is called Moodle in Russian Education, Possibilities and Prospects. I'm the Kalmykova Svetlana, St. Petersburg Polytechnical University. We all do know about this product, module. We love it, especially those who are present during this section. That's why we would like to discuss it and about how to promote it and which possibilities of its promotion are available in Russian education. Can we see my presentation, please? It's a brief and short one. And Module in Russian Education, Possibilities and Prospects. Next slide. Before we're going to begin, I would like to tell you briefly what do we have in a Polytechnical University. It's a distributed system of electronic learning, e-learning, realized based on module. It represents more than 12 portals, each portal for each objective for each institution, and these portals are uniting more than 35,000 users. And today, this is more than 1,500 courses. Which possibilities have been realized by our programmers from our side, and with great pleasure we're going to share our developments and ideas with all the employees in our Polytechnical University, and this is one of the directions that we want to share with our colleagues. This is possibility of syncing with groups, with global groups. We know how to assign students by groups by pressing 1-2 buttons, and without adding just students separately. And this synchronization is done together with academic groups. We have developed plugins, and we are speaking about it. This is integration with MS Teams, since right now, in the conditions of remote learning, our video conferences are being conducted in Teams. We do that, and it's very easy to assign the whole team for the learning process by pressing one button. Together with Omega, our industrial partner, we have developed a photo proctoring module, and we implemented it as a separate plugin on a portal, which allows us to connect proctoring module as an additional possibility for the tests, and it's very easy for the teachers. And we hope that thanks to the current conference today and tomorrow, all these possibilities will be available and extended for all of us. Next slide, please. Module allows us, when somebody says that module is not that beautiful, you can apply beautiful design to it, and there's a lot of different topics and diversity of designs. And you see one of the courses, it's one of the portals which has been created for the course. It's the basics of project activities, where we have realized a collection of the project bank. And I'm completing with the next slide when we are saying what is waiting for us in the future. We want Moodle to be friend with artificial intelligence and with all other IT systems that we can make it friend of, and that thanks to our section and our current presentation, it would become more friendly both to people and informational systems which surround us everywhere. This is a brief information about the fact that we love Moodle. We want it to develop. We want to actively be implemented into educational space of Russian universities, and that's why we represent experience by our colleagues. And our first session will be opened by Ananyeva Olga Evgenievna. The topic for her presentation, Moodle portal of Logotech as an element of integrated digital infrastructure of the university, as a continuation of the topic about friendliness of interface. Olga Evgenievna, welcome. Dear colleagues, I hope that you can hear me, so I would like to propose to get acquainted with our developments in the area of integration of Moodle for the environment where many universities find themselves when they already have some educational systems, and Moodle is very convenient to inbuilt into it. Next. Our educational portal started its activity since the year 2011. Back then, when the e-learning center was created and we've started development of the portal, we have understood that we are not starting from the scratch, because in our university we already had widely developed informational infrastructure, and since the very beginning we started building our educational portal as a subsystem for the university. Next slide. Therefore, for development of the learning courses, we've used data provided by the subsystem, work curriculum, educational curriculum, and contingent system through the web services system. These data from these subsystems was collected, then we have formed it into the educational portal. On the basis of Moodle, courses and curricula has been developed, and then people were signed for it, and then students went through certain educational activities in the framework of those educational disciplines they had to learn according to educational curriculum. After this educational activity of the students became into certain points, these points have been accumulated, and then they've been transferred into the system of rating system written that was following, not even following, but it was controlling the educational process related with grades of the students at the given moment of time. By 2020, the system transfers data to the personal room of the student, where the student can accumulate on the corporate portal of the university. The course structure on the educational portal looks the following way. We have a list of faculties and institutes inside the university. Then separately, we have a block dedicated to placement of working programs. On one side, these working programs were the basis for creating the e-courses, due to the fact that under these working programs or methodological complexes, we understood the full set of documents, and while creating the e-course, the set of documents was imported into this electronic course. Then separately, I would like to show you the block related to courses of additional educational practices and other categories that you see here, which were adopted with the development of our portal. For example, due to the fact that every learning course is related to educational curriculum, and for every discipline, we form special course curriculum. Many teachers which lead several courses, for example, the foreign language teachers or the teachers which split groups into subgroups, and their creative activities, well, they had a lot of creative ideas and they could not realize them within one electronic course. So for them, we had to develop so-called courses, which have divided the learning group into two subgroups. At the same time, we had a reverse situation when teachers have received the possibility or necessity of holding disciplines in different faculties, in different groups. So basically, the course content was very similar. So in this case, for those teachers, we've been creating so-called general courses, so that all these people and everything else has been accumulated in one single course. So the structure is very diverse, but nevertheless, as I've told you, it's related to our development and to the basis that we have used and that we have related at the initial stage of portal development. On this slide, you can see the structure. For example, if you take separately an institution or the faculty, every faculty trains students in certain directions of activities. You can see an example here of the faculty of IT and information technologies. Every direction of their training is presented here, and then every direction can have a list of profiles on which students have to be trained additionally, and then each profile can be split into the quarters, educational quarters, and you see the master's degrees, and you see the 3 months sections of the quarters. On the basis of this, we have created e-courses. On this slide, you can see an example of how does the education group looks like. And we already have said that our colleagues can record the group through the synchronization process, and we can do that. So from the contingent subsystem, we receive all the data related with all the students separated by groups. Every student group has a name which can define whether it's online or offline training and the profile of their learning. That's how we can easily connect these students through the synchronization of the global group to those particular courses they have signed for, and they have to visit according to their learning plan. And due to the fact that we have a separate topic here, because in the university at the moment of creation of the educational portal, we've had a very powerful digital infrastructure. The entrance into the educational portal is provided to every user in Logitech, everybody who has the accounts at the initial stage. The construction of our portal is done through the ID of the university. So users got connected through LDAP in Moodle. Right now, we have everywhere in our university, everywhere we use the Trust ID technology, and our portal right now gets connected to the same technology as well. Thank you. This slide you can see the set of courses for the first quarter with IT master's degree courses, and for each of these courses according to the learning curriculum you can see that we have synced the global group, master's, IT, and the profile information is also synced. So before the September 1st we download all the educational plans and curriculums for the university, then we form the list of educational groups, and then these educational groups are getting listed for the next following learning disciplines. Next one. Due to the fact that educational process is something very multifaceted and very serious, in addition to standard roles, teacher, student, and assistant, we also had some roles related with management of educational process. In the beginning, we have added the role as deputy head of department, and we have had specific deputy heads of departments that we received through the subsystem of our HR department. The role of deputy of the university is to enroll into the course our users and having a possibility of seeing what really happens in the course. It's a little bit role of control and a little bit of management. The deputy of the cathedral signs up only for those courses which apply to this particular course. Well, we also have added the role of the written, which is related to the fact that this particular employee have helped employees of their own cathedral to do some technical tune-up of the electronic course, because as I've told you previously, those actions of our students which were related with educational activities, they have permitted us to take away these from electronic courses and then transfer this information to the system of sub-control of electronic activities. Additionally, last year, due to the fact that all university teachers had to submit the e-course systems, we have added a role of viewer. That's how we call it, like a dean of the faculty or another appointed person from the department, and he had a possibility, if it's a dean, then it was for the whole faculty. He had the possibility to look at all the courses. If this role was related not with the dean but with some other responsible person, this person had only possibility to see at all the courses of this particular category. For controlling purposes, in order to see which courses are open, which of them are closed, and in such a way we can have a possibility to visually see some mechanisms. And for an extended period of time, we have a role which is called viewer of the courses. And recently, it was attached to representatives of educational department. This role helps a person to see what is doing what without possibility of editing, just on the level of a viewer, and just for the visual control. In addition to visual control, of course, we do have various reporting systems, but because it's not related with data transfer between subsystems, in the framework of this presentation, I'm not going to speak about that, but I would like to tell you that in addition to visual control of the courses, there's also control related with getting the reporting data from e-courses, and it allows people who execute this control to somehow find their way around on what really happens in these electronic courses all over the university itself. We've been saying that in our university we have a rating system written which helps us to control the current and intermediate grades of the students. On the screen you can see some examples of the technological mapping which existed before we started working with educational portal. The written system works in the university for more than 25 years. I cannot tell you exactly, but nevertheless this subsystem was always used and basically represents a set of elements which allow to separate training activities of the students and separate some points by a certain period of time and therefore control the activities of the students. What did we use for electronic courses in order to get implemented in this system? And basically speaking, the data was given into the system. It was fed there. We have used, as you see on the left side, standard set of categories of the course, electronic course. Then, due to the fact that any element on any course which can be evaluated and can enter this card set, teachers were making these cards, and out of those evaluated element sets which can be one for the forming of the good students. And you see in the middle picture, here's an example. Well, in the module number 1 we have separated those elements in the module which are related with the technical maps. And finally, on this electronic course, we have to specify those threshold values for different gradings. And these final exam gradings are related with periods of learning. So it's the 7th, 12th, and 17th week. Therefore, in this electronic course, we form fully the whole educational activities of the student, and electronic course allows us to recalculate this activity into points and transfer to the analysis system further. The next one, please. Well, on this slide you can see, well, it's understandable that the top picture shows you those points accumulated by students in the electronic courses, and at the bottom image you can see how these points are reflected in a written system on the corporate portal in that particular subsystem that was inviting living housing activities of the student. In order for the student to easily find their way around on how are they successful from the point of view of compliance to this grading written system, in the e-course we have a module which allows him to control his educational activities. And you can see here that there's a certain grading ranked by exams 1, 2, 3, 4 on the basis of those points which are given by the teacher. And additionally, we have presented a certain forecast by students if with this educational workforce that they show and which points they accumulate by a certain moment of attestation, we can see which grade he can get. And you can see an example here. When the current point, and it's not really high for this particular class because the number of points is not sufficient enough, but because the first testing, right now we have a testing week in our university, it has been completed, student has accumulated those points which were planned by a teacher for being acceptance by the first testing and forecast of his learning. We see the point, it's on the level of good. So for the student, it's a certain call to action. If he agrees for the lesson, good, but if he wants to get excellent grade, well, it makes sense to do some additional activities. Next slide, please. In addition to educational facilities, organization of the electronic courses and electronic portal, well, I would like to show those directions which we are supporting at the educational portal. As I've told you, the main contingent or the main group of students is going through the corporate accounts. So in our network, user networks, these are teachers, students, and employees, and they have account, and through this account they can enter education portal as well. In addition to that, we do support learning for external users which have no inner university accounts, but we have separated, well, a separate account for the Institute of Additional Education, and out there we have a separate administrator who controls, manages of everything else in a framework of the Institute of Additional Education, and it has a special category where they do all the management functions, recording functions, etc. So we have split these resources if possible, so we can speak about that as well. Also, this portal can be used and is used for holding different Olympics, Olympic Games, whole Russian Olympic Games, due to the fact that Volga Tech has also a portal of open education portal, moped.net, and we have located there a lot of different courses which can be used also for teaching our internal students as well inside of a university portal. And of course, we have tuned up the alliance between two educational portals. For example, IT courses, which are the open courses in the portal Impaired, they are used widely during the IT courses, and different training disciplines and points from this educational portal, open educational portal, they are transferred and they are used in the framework of the particular discipline which has been learned by students in our educational portal. So for the student, this transition is very, how can I call it, seamless. They do not get registered on this open portal, and they use a Volga Tech account, and by this account they are getting transferred to MPED. Very interesting to my point of view are two directions about which I will speak later. At the portal we have started testing on the basis of the working programs that I've been speaking about, and questioning of the teachers by the eyes of students, and I would like to speak about these points separately. Testing on the funds of evaluative means, it was done before the accreditation of the university by the state, and basically the objective was following. In order for students to be able to go to the tests in various disciplines under remaining knowledge, it's called remaining knowledge testing. For every direction of training and profile we have created separate courses. All the students were assigned for these courses from particular profiles, and then we have formed tests they had to pass. As you can see, the course is separated by years: first, second, third, and fifth course, and you see some examples here. Each educational group had access only to that particular section which has applied to the first year students, first course, the second year students to the second course. According to the developed matrix of competency formation, we were able to organize testing of students by separate competencies, and you see this is assignment for the second course, several tests which have permitted them to test by educational competencies. Well, these are relative names of those competencies, then go through the resulting test, during which we've asked them questions in all the disciplines and competencies, and then this course can be used for building some test lessons for some defined criteria. For example, in the end of the course number 3, we had an objective of testing all the students on the point of what they have learned in the course number 3 to the discipline that was available in the cathedral. Well, the test on the basis of certain predefined criteria. The course structure is such that, well, it's understandable that the main topic in this course is related to forming of the question bank. The questionnaire bank structure was important from Excel. In other words, every section was preparing the profile of their own matrix of formation, and then this matrix was imported into the e-course. The main objective was to remind about this course and fill it with questions. Well, some of the teachers that have actively prepared the courses and have been doing that in Moodle, we took these questions from the courses, the same teachers, which, let's say, knew the technology of creating tests at the initial level. They've been preparing questions in Word in a specially tagged file, and then this file was important to this electronic course. So in a certain period of time, we have received full catalog of disciplines with a set of questions which could be used for holistic testing. And this, how the results of testing are looking like. When we see the learning group, we see the specifics of specific competencies, we see a certain piece here, we see some personal competencies which are shown in color. And in points, you can see how much student accumulates for every competency. And into this blank page we have received after the completion of this resulting students for the 4th graduate students. Next slide, please. And yet another direction that was realized in our education portal. Just because we have recorded all the students and we had all the necessary tools for doing the questioning, and this particular module was written separately. It's not a standard Moodle module, but an additional component. In a questionnaire of a teacher by the eyes of the students, we form a certain questionnaire and basic criteria. So it's a list of questions to which we have to receive the feedback from our students. Then we form the list of disciplines for the previous learning year, and also from the corporate portal this list is being taken and this questionnaire is being created. Students, when they enter educational portal, they see this questionnaire, they fill it, then they process them and they take them into consideration when the teacher is being rated. Well, today we continue working on improving our educational portal. Today we are expecting a new objective to place working programs on the portal, because in the corporate portal the forming of working programs is done through the form system, and it's a very interesting system. So we are going to try to upload this working program and download it not through the files, but we'll do it in an automated mode through those tools which are available for all of us. And yes, we do work with a schedule block in order so that in a pandemic dangerous situation all the students would receive all the necessary information, including about their classes at the educational portal as well. Next slide, please.
Well, this actually ends my presentation. I don't know how to ask a question in this environment, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you, Olga. Well, I think the questions will be passed on from moderators from the chat feed. So far, I haven't seen any questions in the chat feed. Very exciting. From our point of view, you have indeed shown us an integrated information environment that replaces part of the information systems. And actually, in my university, we're also thinking about what else can be transferred to Moodle and where to use it, how better it is, or how more valid it is than through using other information systems. And here, we've seen quite a bright example how it's already been done in Logotech. So, Olga, thank you very much. We're waiting for questions, and I think that at the end of the session, we'll come back to them again. or maybe we'll do it after tomorrow, after Mary Kovac's presentation. We'll meet again at the roundtable discussion. We've seen how Moodle gets integrated into the information environment, how you can implement competence-based models. Everybody is now used to such buzzwords as digital profile, digital competence, competence-based model, what you can say about it, how you can build it, what you can see there, which competences can be hooked up. And the next speaker, Suren, is going to explain how they're building and visualizing their competence-based model in Moodle. So welcome, Suren. Hello, dear colleagues. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Okay, great. I see my presentation now, so let me begin. Olga has already said that we have done quite a lot of work on the internal portal. I'm sorry, Igor, could you put the sound down, please, from the speakers? There's feedback. So I'm back. Sorry. We're now talking about our external portal. Olga has already talked about it. It's also a Moodle portal, but it's an Opel Logotech portal, moped.net. It's now called the educational portal of the Volga region education system. It was created as part of the Regional Competence Center based on St. Petersburg Polytechnic. And in this portal, because it's not so much embedded in formal education, we have more opportunity for all sorts of experiments. Had we tried to run all these experiments in our internal portal, we'd be strictly bound by the rules and regulation, and we'd had to get permissions and approvals from the education authority. Whereas in this external portal, we have much more freedom to experiment. Next slide, please. The purpose of building a competence-based model, or better say, the next step, would be to build adaptive, personalized learning trajectories, learning paths system. To do this, we need two boxes. The competence-based model of the learner as such, and also we need to have a competence-based model for the courses based on the interaction between these two blocks. So we can build recommendation, build some trajectories, predict something, organize automated feedback, and all sorts of capabilities that AI and adaptive systems offer. Well, Igor Nikayev will speak about all the rest a little bit later than me, whereas I will explain how we build these two blocks. Next slide. If we try and identify the main tasks, it's clear that these faraway strategic tasks are to be kept in mind. But when we were starting to build the competence-based model, we tried from things very much down to earth. A bit later, I'll show you what we're basing upon when we started building the competence-based model. The first effort to build a competence model was to keep the continuity when designing adjacent courses. It's clear that when we design learning disciplines, or when the creators of the software design the software as such, they try to ensure this continuity through competence. But in real life, this continuity doesn't get to fruition. So quite often, software or curricula are being designed as Word documents. Just as was saying, we're now implementing a working curricula design system But when we're starting to work on the competence-based models, we didn't have any automated mechanisms like that. But we wanted to stick to this idea. Also, we understand that Volga Tech is, of course, cooler than everyone, just as like advertising goes. But there are universities who moved farther in their competence areas. They have some experience and best practices that we would like to use. So it wouldn't be bad if courses from other universities could be built into our system. So that people would come to us and say, hey guys, you're doing a great job, but there's something that you are missing, and here are our classes that we could offer you to fill the gaps. So this is one of the principles. We leave the capability in our competence-based model to get external classes embedded. And the final part is about the automated recommendation of classes for the learners based on their competence-based models. So basically, we can recommend further studies for them to help them build their learning path. So they've come to us, said, I want to be educated in this, and then based on their competence model and knowledge of the subject matter, we can offer them a certain chain of educational activities that will bring them to the desired state. So we now have 6 bricks that you can split into parts. On the left, you see it on the course side, 3 modules that we've already implemented. That's the description of the category competence model. I'm talking about categories in the Moodle understanding. We have categories of classes, of courses, and it makes sense that the competence-based model, it's clear that there's a course and competence-based model. But if we want to build learning paths, we need to have some general model that covers some knowledge area or part of the knowledge area. So adjacent courses are put within the same category, and they have they apply to say the same set of competencies. After having built this foundation, we can take a set of pre-described competencies, build those learning paths. In itself, it may not be as exciting, but if we bring together the visualization of the course competence-based model and the learner competence model, we get some intersection that graphically shows the user if they can select this class or maybe they're missing something, so they need to close the gap by going through some other course. I'll show examples. In order to visualize the learner competence-based model, we need to accumulate the outcomes of the learning in the competence model, and you can do it in only 2 ways. When the learner just gets into this model, we offer them initial diagnostic, and after that, we do preliminary population. So we trust them at this level. And after that, when we get their promises confirmed or not, we build an adjusted model, and then this kind of data is visualized and we can compare. So in more detail, how it looks in the interface, in the UI. Next slide. So this is the way the model looks. Firstly, from the viewpoint of setting up the course competence-based model, we started to experiment on our professional upgrade systems that, that has grown before implementing active courses, active programs. We had 6 curricula in 3 courses. By the end of project implementation, we now have 13 active distance professional upgrade programs. And at some point in time, we understood that all our efforts to describe in words what makes one course different from another are not effective enough because based on the initial surveys and graduate surveys, we could see that we had learners who actually found that they have taken up a class not exactly the one they had wanted. So some of them could be transferred to another program through some formal criteria. So we either offered them a different opportunity or lost them. So the starting point for our experiment included 13 programs of professional upgrade in the use of e-learning tools, and they're all interconnected. So the starting point is a competence model of such a digital instructor. It's clear that we, of course, were looking at those professional upgrade programs that other regional competence centers used. Everybody had different approaches to designing these models, but everybody had some competence-based model in mind, explicitly or implicitly. I'm not going to dwell on the content of this competence-based model. I'll just talk about how it was implemented. So we tried to formulate this model of an online instructor, and this model had the following structure. There was a model section, some fragments of interrelated competences. Then we had these competences, and then there was the level of formation of the competence, some qualitative attributes. So we had this monitoring of effectiveness that Sigo is going to talk about. So within this monitoring, there can be some competence, and within this competence, there would be these formation levels. The number would be finite. This is about a qualitative set of, skills and proficiencies that needed in this area. So here we have the formation of this competence-based model in our professional upgrade classes. This one's about online learning, the skills to create online classes. Here we create these sections, set up competences, and decide and define the level of formation, the formation level. So this is a simple description. First level is being acquainted with this competence. Second level is design. And third, synthesis, application, analysis, evaluation. So here we assess the maturity of the competency of the person. And in the next slide, we get to the prerequisites and module outcomes. On the right, you see a visualization of this model, and it's clear from it that each course has some inputs requirements, that's prerequisites, and outcomes. What knowledge, what skills, what formation levels should be possessed by the learner at the input, and what they're learning at the output, what they have learned at the output. The next slide shows the UI, how it looks. So the instructor that's creating the course, they're setting up based on the elements of the competence-based model that had already been preset. So they're selecting those competences and outcomes. This is the way for us to describe the model. But for this model to be able to work, next slide, we link the learning outcomes of the model to specific items. On the left, you see the titles of tasks, and on the right, the competence levels that are linked to them. And so we see that, for instance, the top element, that graduation task, so you check 2 competence there, and you need to score 6 out of 10 at least, so that we could believe that this competence level has been formed with this learner. So we've set up the competence-based course model. So when a learner gets into this course, they put the dots on their path, the learning path. And then, because we're building course models, we can build learning paths, because the system now knows what are the prerequisites for each course and what the output requirements are. It can use them as steps in the learning path. So in the current implementation phase, this mechanism is in development, is under development. For now, we can identify where we have problem areas, and the learner can't just switch from one class to another. But because this knowledge is already there in the database in a clear and explicit form, we can build a recommendation system that will try building these learning paths automatically, or suggest a manual user what can be done for each particular learner. Now let me show you how it looks from the learner point of view, how the competence-based model looks from the learner's perspective. As I've said, when a learner gets into the first induction class within a category, they're offered diagnostic, we call it questionnaire, even though technology-wise it's implemented as a test. But some questions in this test are testing something. Others are based on trust, on what the learner is going to say. So we kind of implicitly trust our candidates, and just mark the knowledge and skills that they have promised they have. Then they can sign up for classes, and based on the data that on the performance that they show, next slide please, on the performance that they show, we can build a confirmed model based on the marks they got in tests, or just going through the curriculum. We are therefore continue building this model and then visualize it. How can it be done? Firstly, we can visualize this model and show it to the learner so they could find the next class that would be a best fit for them. So, for instance, we see an orange-colored class, and then at the top a larger area, which is the existing competence model for this particular learner. So we see that their competence level meets the requirements of this course, and this course fits in their interest area. On the right, you see a situation where the prerequisites for a certain class are higher than the existing competence model of the learner, meaning that this learner is not this course is not going to be a good fit for this learner. So basically, it doesn't mean that they won't be able to sign up. But we would say that maybe you think twice to go through certain classes first. Or maybe our system does know everything and you'll cope with this class. So far, it's a soft recommendation rather than a hard stop. The next slide shows how you can choose courses for yourself. You could just compare course prerequisites and the outcomes. So this is a way for the learner to choose a class. They can see whether a model can develop. So at the previous stage, they were focusing on the prerequisite of the class. And here, they can develop understanding where they are going to be developing, what will add in their treasure stove of knowledge after they've passed through the course that they're selecting. The next slide. As I already said, because we are setting a link between the course attributes to be evaluated and the competence levels, the points earned by the learner turn into dots on this competence model. And it appears that even though the user may not have graduated from a course, they will still have accumulated some values, some data points for their competence-based model. It can all be immediately used by us to offer this learner some additional information. So the next slide shows the next steps that we're going to take working with this competence-based model. On the one hand, based on this pilot program, we want to get feedback and to adjust the model, and based on special courses in the professional upgrade system, probably we'll see some gaps, and we'll rework some material. Then, after we've understood that the model is working, we can think about building an adaptive recommendation system that will be able to offer learners learning curves based on what we know about the user and about their performance in the courses they have passed. Then, as I've said, we're interested in collaborating with other universities, and therefore, one of the next steps would be to implement a module. Can you bring me back to the previous slide, please? The collaboration module being a certain environment where we can jointly work on competence models, collaborate, adding competences, developing competences, extending competences. And the last thing, we're planning to use competence-based model to build specializations, so to be used outside the professional upgrade system in other courses in order to do specializations. We're now discussing the question of building minor subjects. So we'll be able to build those adaptive minor courses in MOPED, because we already have these links between the open portal and the internal portal. It's not going to be a problem for students to go this way. So that's about it. These are our contact details. So if you have any questions, please get in touch with us and we'll be happy to answer. Thank you. Thank you, Søren. Indeed, we see how Moodle is rushing into our day-to-day lives in all areas, including competence-based models, integration to the information environment. I have put a link in the chat. I know that John Cootie is probably watching us, who came up with an idea to initiate a Moodle community covering St. Petersburg. And this fits with what Søren has said. I think we all want to interact with each other as part of the community, because within the community it's much easier to collaborate developing some plugins. And because tomorrow's meeting will probably not happen. Her masterclass will take 2 hours, and the users will be using Moodle. So I suggest that we do it a bit later. More details about that to come. We've heard about the low-tech experience. We've taken a look at competence-based models. We've seen integration with information systems. But actually, in order to get to these competence models, our users need to study some learning material that's also posted in Moodle. And instructors posting materials in Moodle can also make mistakes. How to go about that in a way that would be the most comfortable for the instructor, including the use of AI. So Sergei Kinash and Nikolai Filipov are going to share with us. So please listen to their presentation. Nikolai Filipov is going to speak. I'm sorry, I was calling him Nikolai Alexandrovich. Nikolai, can you please zoom in on Nikolai and his presentation? I can't hear anything. One, two, three. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I'm starting. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm offering to your attention a presentation about automatic discovery of technical errors in Moodle distance courses. Let me first say a few words about our experience in distance learning in the Orthodox St. Tikhon Humanitarian University. Distance learning classes have been in existence for 16 years now. In 2013, we opened an Institute of Distance Learning, all programs of which are delivered to users remotely wherever they are. So since 2016, distance learning has been carrying on in Moodle. For us as software developers, it's very important that Moodle has an open architecture, which allows creating our own plugins for the specific use in the institute. So Moodle courses are created, set up by humans who can make human errors. For instance, dates can be set differently, or links may be included to resources that are unavailable to students. Errors may also be related to links becoming unavailable, whereas they had been available when they were included. To find this, you need to allow the time to check for errors, which takes a toll on the time of the instructors. So this is a typical process of searching and correcting of technical errors in Moodle courses. These are the main steps in this process. The green box includes the activities before the start of the learning process. Instructors manually corrected courses for technical errors before the start of the semester, but part of the mistakes remained undiscovered, staying in the way for the learning process. Students would then find those errors, would send questions to support, would wait for these technical errors to be eliminated. Then support would find the reasons of these errors, write back to the instructor, and the instructor would fix those errors. The main problem was that instructors got to spend extra time to look for technical errors. Students would lose time talking to support, and the learning process would be disrupted. In January 2019, the distance learning lab offered a new process to discover and fix technical errors in Moodle based on the software robot for the automatic error search. So you can see the process on the screen. The robot every day before the start of the semester would check the course for technical errors, sending notification to the instructors.
Teachers, before the beginning of the semester, by the author date of the course, he checks the errors, and the robot on weekly basis sends notifications to top managers for the control of the courses where the errors were not fixed. The main advantage of this new process is the fact that errors are searched automatically and fixed before the beginning of the quarter, while students, they don't spend their educational time, and due to technical errors, their educational process is not being stopped. Realization of new process of search and fixing of the errors by our lab, we have created the auto audit of the module courses, which had stages shown on a slide, and they were formalized on the criteria of technological errors in the module courses. Then we have developed algorithms of searching for technical errors, and on the basis of these algorithms we have developed an algorithm auto-audit of SDO module, which on a predefined schedule executes the following works: automatically searches for technical errors in the module courses, then sends letters about these errors in their courses, and sends to top managers letters about the courses where errors have not been fixed yet. By 2020, since January of 2020, the auto audit has been implemented into remote education university, and it continues to be implemented. And we're looking at the technical errors in the module courses for which we have developed formal criteria. Relatively, we can separate them into three types: errors in course settings, errors in class settings, errors in links and files. Afterwards, I will tell you about each type of errors. Next slide. On the slide, you can see different types of errors in settings of the course. For the errors of this type, formal criteria were developed for the first of all, but we have figured out that these errors can be seen very seldomly, and their consequences is more critical for the educational process. So development of the functions for searching of the errors of this type has been delayed and is still in the work to complete. On this slide you can see various types of errors in class settings, and I will tell you about the errors 1.1 and 1.2. First, in the logbook of science, well, they are not aligned. We have developed automatic search for this error because students, they have problems if they see different sequence of the courses in the logbook, and that's where the student sends a request to the technical support because of this. Next one, 2.2, error of the sequence of the classes in the course and in the scale of the progress, they are not aligned. In our courses, we use the plugin progress of completion progress. So the development of the function of the discovery of this error was very important for us. Not all the teachers have been able to see the necessity to build the sequence of the classes both in the courses and in the sequence of the schedule according to the course sequence. However, according to the technical support knowledge base, we know that students usually follow the progress logbook. This error can lead to the situation that a student, when he comes to an end of the course, in the progress line will see classes which were in the middle of the course. That's why this error was, this function of discovery of this error was implemented. Another type of errors is in file and links errors. They're very critical for the learning process. So the function of the search was realized first of all. All the errors of this type you can see on this particular slide, and I will tell you about several of them. For example, error number 3.5. 3.5. Non-operational link to external site has been attached to the file. Well, the external file link stops working due to unavailability of the external site. Because of this, students cannot get access to necessary training materials. They're writing to the tech support, to teachers, and they have to wait until the teacher will replace the link by another resource. Automatic search of those errors completely has excluded those situations. For example, error 3.7. Text had an attachment of a URL to the course or an element of the course to which students have not been assigned. Very often, teacher creates a link to an element of this course, but after copying of this course for the new quarter, the link stops being available for the students because it links to the course to which students have not been assigned. Following this link, the student gets a message that they have not been assigned for this particular course. And we did have a lot of those errors, and automatic search has helped us to fix this problem. Okay, let's go to stages of the process of auto-audit. On daily basis, the auto-audit robot checks existing courses and sends to the teachers letters about errors in their courses. In the upper part of the slide, you can see an example of a letter to the teacher. The letter has links to the courses of the teacher and direct links to the report of the course audit, which has listed all the errors in the course. Then teacher opens the audit report in the logbook with the recommendations and fixes those errors. The teacher can go to the link of the audit, following the link from the letter or from the page of the course, like you see in the right part of the slide. Once a week, the robot sends to top managers letters to control fixing of these errors process. In the lower part of the slide, you can see an example of such a letter. For the convenience of the control, a letter contains a list of all the current courses which have discovered the errors, the last names of their teachers, and links to these courses. And reports from auto-audit, the same letter on daily basis being sent to the technical support team in order for the auto-audit program to be executed without any errors. Next slide, please. After the transition to auto-audit report, the teacher sees the error report in the course. That's how this error report looks for 2.1 and 2.7. If the error happened during the course, for example, the error 3.7, you can see the link to the class and to the field. After clicking the link with the name field, you go to the edit line and you can fix the error being a teacher. Next slide. On this slide, you can see the list for fixing technical errors that was developed for the teachers. In the left column, you see messages, error messages, then reason for the messages, recommendations on how to fix those errors, the readiness of the function on automatic search of this error. So in the plan, whether we are preparing or the function has already been implemented. Who is the target to receive the report about these errors? You can also in this particular column. Also the period for the course investigation. This column, you can see how many days before the beginning of the course it's being checked and how many weeks after the end of the course this check is being completed. Let's look at plugin settings. In plugin settings for the auto-audit, you can see the categories of the courses where you have to do the auto-audit. You can look at the identifiers of the deputy of the department and other technical parameters and technical support. Very important part of the settings is the settings of the objective planner, which sends messages to teachers. And in the lower part of the screen, you can see an example of settings of the objective of auto-audit in a goal planner. For example, we start this planner every morning 6 p.m. On this lower image, you can see 6:55, 6:56. Next slide. Settings of auto-audit plugin for every type of the error can have the following parameters: include or exclude the search for an error, who should receive the error messages, teacher, manager, or technical support, who should receive the copy of the letter on this error, how many days prior to the course the error should be searched for, and how many weeks after the completion of the course this error search should be completed. In the completion of my presentation, I would like to tell you about the advantages after implementation of this plugin in the remote education facility. First of all, we have reduced the work of teachers and searching of those errors. Then students are not getting distracted by those errors and writing reports to technical support and waiting for fixing those errors. Number 3, educational process is not being disturbed by those technical errors. Number 4, we have reduced the number of calls to the technical support. I also would like to tell you about the future of this plugin development. We have plans to continue development of this auto audit in SDO courses in order to check all the types of technical errors for which formal criteria has been developed, and possibly we can learn to do the automated auto audit for some other content related errors, like the absence of the content feedback to the for example, teacher says good or bad, so it's and usage of non-recommended phrases in communication between the teacher and the student. Thank you very much for your attention, and right now I'm ready to answer your questions if you have any. Well, thank you very much, Sergey Anatolyevich. Nikolai Alexandrovich. The question is from Olga. I don't know whether it's to you or not. How many courses you have on your portal? One teacher doesn't have a lot of courses. 2, 3, in some cases up to 10, no more than 10. But in total we have approximately 50 courses in a period of 1 quarter. Is that right, Sergey Anatolyevich? Yes, approximately. Yeah. Thank you. Well, right now we see no questions, but can the external users, can they write to our chat? Or maybe other questions will be transferred to us from other chat. But I think things that we're able to see, the experience of Vogatech, the experience of GTU, we can integrate and unite, and this is a very powerful module with artificial intelligence, and all of this is being integrated as plugins into the Moodle. I don't know. What about development of the colleagues, and can they be integrated into the Moodle core? We in Polytechnical University were trying to write our plugins in such a way so that they wouldn't influence on the core of the Moodle. And about our experience, our leading programmer, Sergey Sergeyevich Talpigin, is going to tell you. Sergey Sergeyevich, the topic is modular principle while forming the educational process, educational portal or educational environment. Dear colleagues, how can you hear me? Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Today I will tell you about the modular principle of forming an educational environment of the portals on the example of SPVGU. And of course, this is a screenshot from our open.spb.ru site, which says that practically every of our universities have their own remote educational portal, which is related that we have certain specifics on the site of every university, and we're trying to follow the specifics. In other words, different directional courses can go through this portal. Some people can hold some external programs if there is a need for external registration. On some portals, this external registration is not necessary and has to be disconnected, depending on the specifics that every university has their own modules and their own blocks of the courses. And basically speaking, this distribution allows us to more flexibly approach the process of teaching of students on the courses. And you can see here that we have a separate portal, MOCSPB.ru, where we conduct our raising qualification programs. Regional Center has a separate portal. Additional Education portal is available separately, and all these portals have a layer or API which allows us to receive data from external systems to generate courses inside of these portals. Today I'm going to tell you about 3 main types of modules which are used by us and which we are relying upon and developing. The first type, I've represented them as those little clouds. This is organizational modules which allow us to organize some learning processes on the investment learning portal. So we are using CAS server for authentication of the users, internal users, I mean, meaning teachers and students, and they are entering using the single login. Having a single button, and they enter the password only once. And for getting data about teachers, I'm speaking about the preventive recording and creating courses for them, we use integration with systems like Load from Shakhtinskaya and Compass system. And we have other developments from the point of view of course generation, where we can automatically create courses on the basis of templates or on the basis of the information that comes from the schedule, load schedule. So that's how these modules are organized, and I have selected 3 interactive modules which are really popular. One of them is a video lectures module, which allows us to equalize the work with the video content inside of the Moodle course. So project activity module, which was developed in the beginning as an interactive course module, and then became a portal with external users, with access of students from other institutions, and a new module in proctoring. For Moodle, it's a photo proctoring that we were developing together with a company last summer. And it was used for enrolling students into the bachelor's or master's degrees. Also, we have other developments, analytical. We collect and we can upload analytical reports by different types of activities of the students and teachers in Moodle. Also, I've made a small scientific work together with polytechnical teachers on analytical activities and activities of the students in the online courses. And how can we try to understand that students behave improperly or dishonestly? I will show you these modules as well, and a simple module that we have a lot of portals where we use Moodle. This has to be monitored, and we have a separate block for monitoring of servers, remote education servers. The first is the organizational modules. At all our polytechnical portals, we use CAS server for authentication. The student presses the single entry button, and if he has authenticated himself once in the system, then he doesn't need to enter the password. For example, if he entered it in September, he is logging in password and a CAS. Then every time he comes, he presses the button at home, and he easily enters the system. Other systems are integrated, and he can easily follow this button either automatically or by pressing it. So, what is the result of this? At the stage of entrance, we can receive information from different informational systems. For example, while entering, you can get the global group of the student. We can see what group he participated in the portal, and if it has changed, we can change it and reassign the student for those courses he should go through according to new information available. If the student was kicked away from the school, several groups can be, if he's not disconnected from the old groups because he was learning and he has certain debts in those groups, so he's being subscribed for new groups if he's entering new groups. So this is the principle that we can use CAS at the level of entrance, we can transfer different information about the student, and all the way to pictures, integral information from other systems as well, which is very convenient. Integration with other corporate systems, database, HR database and student database. HR database gives us information about teachers, and Compass we use for these purposes. By a single click we can select a certain teacher from our database. We can find him by ID number, and we can assign him for certain online course that he's going to teach. So we're not using the bottom of creating the account almost ever. So that's number one. Number two, integration with IS. Student allows us to sync groups of students. So the group of students, well, if we have students who signed for the course from the global group and their number has changed, then admin of the portal can press a button and he can sync them preventively. For example, for project activities, we can have 5,000 people. So the composition of the group is changing every day. Therefore, if the information is being updated only after certain students are entering, so at the current moment of time, you can press the button and you can sync the number and composition of the students in a specific course with the information which is available in the informational systems in order to give us updated grades and to see who entered and who didn't enter. Maybe some people can have problems with that. So here's an example on this slide. If we need a record for a certain course and we should upload it from some additional information, like we have some additional person assigned to this course, or some organizational course where we should have a list of groups of all the students of the first grade, or if something administrative, we can upload it from the load in Excel format. So we can have the Excel file with a list of the groups and the name of the discipline. We can download it in the Excel format into the Moodle, this cross-section of the load by a certain particular lesson name, and you can see on this course. Here's an example of history class. We see the list with automatic subscription of the groups of students and with a number of those students. As soon as the global group is signing for the course, then students of this group is being synced with it, and therefore students get access to this informational system. Well, to this informational course. Next slide. This is how we can quickly, using some uploads, and we can assign students for different courses. There can be several courses, and we can solve a problem of pre-assigning where administratively some students had to be connected, and suddenly new students came to us, foreign students for example, and they have got signed. These problems being solved, and of course we don't have to create manually any additional records. Also, we have ideas about automatic course generation. One module was developed by us for template course generation So we can show some template of the course, and then we can download it into certain categories or subcategories, or manually we can create these courses, or downloadable courses, or manually we can create those courses in this category, and we will create them on the basis of this template of this course. For example, we need some organizational part of the course with some content that has to be copied. So, for example, some institute, we have open preparational direction, and we have to create 40 courses so that these courses wouldn't be loaded manually by a certain backup, and they should be imported. We shouldn't create them empty. We can create them with a certain structure inside. That's number one. And pandemics has applied its own corrections. Therefore, we have learned what should be done. We have learned how to generate courses on the basis of schedule and loading from the list, and generation on the basis of loads. In other words, we can receive a certain structure, like in JSON format, which specifies what is the name of the course, which profile direction it's related to, which groups are pre-recorded into it, and how many topics are within it, how many classes are included into this course. And of course, we can, in this upload, we can create categories and courses. Also, we can make mass import and export of the courses, and we can specify list of identifiers, make archives of these courses, and afterwards we can deploy them in case if those courses have to be transferred from one portal into another portal. Here's an example of generation of courses from the schedule. We know that there are classes. These classes are taught by several teachers. Therefore, there are practices, there are practical work, there are lab works. We create this organizational structure in the portal, the training profile, and if this course is given in several directions, in several profiles, this course can be created in a higher category of the profile between several profiles in the framework of the program. If it's given only for one profile, then it's going to be created within this profile. Then, internal composition of the course. In other words, this topic is specified here that for the group number 47, 31, 204, there are lectures 21st of October, and this lecture is given by this particular teacher. With the automatic creation of this course, this topic is being created with this content, and we can say that right now in Polytechnical University we use video conferencing system from Teams Microsoft. So when these type of courses are being generated, we have generated Teams links, and for those courses we have been implementing those links into the course, and we have generated one class, and the link for its execution was also created. Administrative modules. Well, I've told you a little bit about it. Right now, I'm going to tell you about several interactive modules which we have developed so that courses would be more beautiful, more interesting. Therefore, let's go to the next slide, please. One of these modules is called video lectures. Next slide, please. So what is the problem here? The fact is that teachers can record a lecture, and the lecture could be it's a big file. What can be done with it? It has to be placed in the course. It takes a lot of place in the course. You look at it, it's shuts down because it creates by PHP a script, a static file. It's not really convenient. You can store it separately in a separate system, and this is also not really good because there is no integration with the Moodle. You have to give access rights for the teachers, and teachers could download very unclear files like AVI files, and they cannot be viewed in the HTML5. So we have developed this particular module. On the next slide. On the left slide, you can see that in this course we add video lecture element. In the settings of these elements, you cannot see it, but there is a button, upload a file. Teacher connects a file. The file is sent to a server, and if this file is being converted, as soon as it is being converted, the link is given back to the teacher. And after this, when the conversion process ends, in the course we have only the link to this file, and it can be viewed for statical files. We have outside of the course, and they can be viewed. Next slide, please. The next module, project activities. As I've told you previously, we have developed the whole portal for these. It contains theoretical part. A lot of students get signed into the lecture course, and then they go through the tests. The lecture course contains a module, OPD module, which allows us to distribute students by projects. Students can select assumed project topic out of the list, or they can offer their own. Therefore, applications comes to the responsible teachers that will hold these practices, and either they give assignment for them and they don't give assignment for them. It's a separate process. When this application goes, either they're accepted or denied, and by a certain moment of time, they are being approved. And the next slide, we see this practical course being created for which students are assigning. And due to the fact that we have a big number of roles, we use separate portal. We have the head of the project. We have a student who can evaluate the work and input by other students into the execution of a certain task. External coaches from the company, teachers assigned for the practices of specific student. So there's a big number of people which are used at this particular course. It's a separate portal, and of course we also have analytical information for this particular module. It's done separately, so that people responsible for the realization of this course, they could follow execution and how the students are passing this course, how the students are going through the lecture activities, how they go through the practical activities, and then certain diagrams are being built with successful passage or non-passage of this module by students or the course. The next slide is related to photo proctoring. Together with our colleagues, we have developed this module which allows us to do the proctoring of students on the online courses before passing the test or entry exam. The student is asked to make 5 pictures, face pictures, to create a model with certain reaper points where they can follow whether proper student sits in front of the camera and passes the test, or maybe it's somebody else, or maybe he's cheating or not cheating. So some basic criteria of dishonesty while passing this test. We use those criteria and we protocol them. So let's go to the next slide, please. We are not recording a video of how the student passes the exam. We just fix the violations. So this is one of the slides, and you can see that a student was requested to make 5 images, 5 initial images. So he turns his head, and we can see that in his right ear we have a microphone inserted. So according to the regulations, the result of his attempt may be accepted or not accepted. And there are cases when a student turns away the camera, and in the vlog we will have that the person is not found. Or there could be several people present in front of the camera, like his girl was sitting next to him with a notebook, so it can see that there are several people. If the student turns his head, this also can be recorded as a fact of cheating. And they have several thousands of messages like that, that student has been distracted somewhere. So we are fixing only violations. We can define certain criteria. Is he cheating or not cheating? How the student should behave, and we can fix this activity. As for the next one, this system allows us to get rid of staff of proctors in such a way that we can follow the passing of the exam by the student. Maximum 1 person can follow this activity. For example, 1 person can follow 10 students. He will have 1 screen and can follow 10 students. The quality of each image will be a little bit lower because he's watching what proctor watches, and the quality of what is being watched by the system. And post-proctoring, when teacher goes through previous passages and he looks at whether the result should be considered or not accepted, accepted or not accepted. The next one is related to analytical modules. For example, this is the work of one module. It's called GS. It's a small script which is connected to the browser of the student and follows his activities. So we have been working with this as well. It's understandable that existing systems allow us to record and all the way to the actions of the mouse, student's mouse. So we have been building certain heat maps, activity cards, where the students are clicking, which parts of the element, which parts of the course more actively, less actively. So we've tried to build some integral settings that whether it's a good course or bad course, which elements are used more often, less often. So we've been developing this module which allows us to see how much time students have spent in every particular element of the course. So this is the module which we can look at. We've been fighting with the fact that students can enter the course without watching the lectures, and they can immediately pass the test, and they can pass it within 15 seconds, or during the test they can switch between browser links, and possibly he is copying something or not copying something, so we can notify. So we are not looking at Moodle logs, They're not really informative. You can click on them in the morning, how much time he spent in it, so you can approximately evaluate it. And this one is more precise. Next slide. Next slide. For example, this particular module, GSM, we started using it for watching how the student passes the test. For example, one student, while passing the test, was constantly using copy-paste, and he hid his login, and you can see from which browser he does it, from Russia or outside of Russia. And can we notify the teacher with this data that a student possibly was copying something? He had an open file, Word file, and he was copying results from it into his test. And if the teacher thinks that this is something bad, then he can rebuke him for doing that. And this is something that is related to analytical module. There is another small slide, something that we have faced. Let's go to the next slide, please. One of polytechnical students have developed a module so we, with the help of these GSM modules, we've been blocking things like that, so that student had a plugin which have been showing the answers. So the installation of this GSM module has allowed us to notify us that particular student has been using this as a test helper, and we could block the acceptance of the test passing by the student. Also, accidentally, it did happen that we have solved the problem of using online dictionaries when passing English exams while enrolling or learning. Therefore, humanitarian university, English course, and a test. We have understood that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So these are main modules that I've been speaking about. And also we can show several other slides, and I will tell you. This is the next slide. Next slide. Well, for example, I would like to tell you one word before this one. We have this module which is called RUse module, and I would like to tell you about its functionality, that we can assemble course related analytics by course categories, and we can analyze them for understanding of how many students and how actively they've been using courses, how much time did they spend, how many teachers have been working with those courses, and additionally the complexity of the questions and work with questionnaires. The next slide. Related to monitoring, we have a certain system for big number of servers. It's really obvious. So we are following disk systems that we don't have time all the time, so this is a practical thing. So that portal would be always operational and network peaks while passing the entry exams, and CPU power, for example, this virtual service have to be moved somewhere or not. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, you can ask them. Okay, thank you very much, Sergey Sergeyevich. You've told us about the experience of Polytechnical University, and you're ready for integration and cooperation with everybody else. Do we have any questions in the chat? Yes, I would like to read them, or maybe I will write to our chat, from the external chat into our chat. And while our next speakers are going to speak, Bilanin Igor Evgenich and Igor Nikolaevich, you may think about answering those questions. Speaking about Olga Evgenievna, but we have a request to tell us in more detail how the competencies in Moodle are being checked, and how do you solve individual plans for debtors, Suren Valerievich. We have a question to you about what is the labor intensity of creating competency models, and why don't you use inbuilt means of measuring the Moodle competencies? And of course, we have a question whether you've been inventing your competency matrix or you've been following professional standards. And other questions will be copied into the chat. And right now, I'd like to give floor to our next speaker, Igor Vladimirovich Belyanin. We've been speaking about Moodle, and we've been telling you about it more from educational point of view, which problems are available, how they can be compensated, and Igor Vladimirovich is going to tell us how can we extend capabilities of Moodle lectures by the broadcasting online. Hello. I hope you can hear me well. Yes, we can hear you pretty well. Wonderful. Then, in the old pre-COVID days, when lectures were given offline to live students, to good audiences, lecturer could have water with him, board, whiteboard, blackboard, chalk, everything which was necessary so that every material would be conveyed to the students, and it was available back in those days. However, even back in those days, I've been working in a technical university named by Alexeyev. Then I moved into Lobachevsky Research University. Of course, thanks to modern technologies and equipment, we have a possibility of making lectures in such a TV remote format. Well, I would like to tell you, when I started working for university, I got acquainted with the fact that in a Moodle system that was installed in the university, they already have webinar connected to it. But here's the peculiarity. Not all the teachers have the good technique, good webcam, good microphone. And specifically for them, the university have organized special rooms which is divided into 4 independent facilities. In each one of them we have a computer. In each one of them we have a specific good webcam with good microphone, and respectively, 4 teachers simultaneously can hold webinars on the basis of schedule defined by the curriculum of our university. Holding webinars became possible. But there is another topic. Not all the teachers can be placed in these 4 places, but if we need more, then I would propose to make a recording of the lecture. Mostly this is a humanitarian discipline that does not require to tell something in front of the blackboard, so presentation is sufficient. So right now I would like to tell you how this would look in the recording. So we see a teacher, we see his position, name and the last name, the discipline, the department for which this webinar is being prepared, or the recording. Then in the course of presentation of the teacher can switch slides and can click on the mouse and show it, tell something to people. And in the future, this recording is being posted and connected to the course. So sounds very simply. That's how this question was solved. And in order to make those recordings, once again, in order to use the minimal budget, or even without using the budget, we could, by the open source software, for us, it's OBS, Open Broadcast Software. This is something that is available to us. But in order to have something like that, we have used purchased connectors, commercial footages, which give us this wonderful and lively picture. And in a given case, when we've been speaking about recording those lessons, we have extended our audience. Instead of 4 places, we have made more of them. But another thing has appeared. Teachers say that we don't want to go into this audience, to this room and get recorded. We want to make these records ourselves. And back in that case, I've recorded a video. I just want to show a fragment of this video, how it looks like when 2 people, one in Thai, another is Thailess, and I've shown how to tune this software for the recording. And in a screencast, you can see how the main settings can be done. Then I've shown how you can connect the title, how you can give the name of the lecture, the name of the lecture can be changed. All these titles and footages have been transferred to the teacher into his usage, so he could use, if for example he has this possibility at home, and if he has some minimal requirements like availability of the webcam and he has a microphone. It's not an error that I'm telling you this because in a mode of self-isolation or in a mode of quarantine, we have faced things like that, and very often students says that we don't have anything, we have no microphone, we have no cams, but we figure out that there is a microphone, but the camera does not work. But in a given case, I'm showing you on the level of this video that I'm showing you, everything is very simple, and we can use OBS, and I'm connecting cam not with a good and beautiful feedback, but the chroma key that I have. How did we prepare these slides for lectures? There's a peculiarity that if we show these slides to our studio in university, we have used 2 computers. Dictionary is shown on one computer, but in order to organize this at home, we had to go for some clever ideas, but a little bit later, this has been fixed. And this would develop like that. But COVID has started, self-isolation has started, the quarantine has started, and we had to go to lockdown, and we needed a possibility to conduct lectures out of home. I'm not going to list everything and platforms which have been used. People immediately started searching for some new video messengers. They have remembered about Zoom, which 3 years ago nobody have used, and I haven't used it, and I've said that, well, it's not going to be utilized for our broadcasting. I've been involved in IPTV. But it was figured out that it's a great tool. If we can do it in Skype, Microsoft Teams, they have a lot of different tools, and our students, for example, they conduct this work, and they look at different tools, they look at advantages and disadvantages, and they can make some interesting articles. And in the final run, like Microsoft and Windows is used by most of the population, Zoom also became the most popular system. I also use it widely in my teaching activities, and I hold lectures through it, and I will show you the screen from it. I will show you. Before the 17th, I had a lecture with my students, and as you can see, not many people love to show their cameras because they have kids, avatars present there. Nevertheless, what has changed compared to regular lecture? Nothing has changed. Because in front of me I have an audience, but it's very difficult for this audience to blindly, without seeing their reaction, without seeing reaction to own words or your own sentences to work. But you have to get used to things like that. There's a chart where they make records, and I also have possibility of screen demonstration. I have programs or screen demonstration. I show it in a full screen, and in a given case I had a lecture about IT. I show how you can take certain text and you can edit it, how you can change fonts in this text, tags. So basically speaking, these are not just slides but a live demo of the screen, and when it's alive it's perceived much better because you can immediately see do number 1, number 2, number 3. Students right now, they don't really like to record because they know that recording will be available, it's going to be shown to them, and I might show some diagram or some documents. I can show that one can use some interactive whiteboard in a drawing mode. With my tablet I can show that what am I writing on this tablet, and even right now I'm telling that I'm writing like Scrabble script, but you can write different text, you can write formulas, and right now you will be able to see, well, the simplest formula can be written on the screen, like an activity formula. You can see how do I work, then this recording is being done. Maybe you shouldn't pay attention to the fact that I'm not looking constantly on the screen because it makes no sense. And some people who give lectures, for example, I give lectures, and everybody knows that I work for different audiences, and sometimes we have 50% of time that we spend turning to the audience, 50% of time we're turning our back to the students because we're writing something on the screen. Same thing here. So that's how we organize lecture recording for us. And right now I would like to show you how this lecture is being registered in our e-learning system, informatic lecture, and my lectures were published and they have this TV format. That's how they look like. Transitions. Also, we have the slideshow like that. I'm not going to show you lecture 1, lecture 2. And please pay attention that all these lectures can be found on YouTube. So one time, if you record this lecture once, you can show it several times. And the access to this lecture is available at any moment of time. And of course, number of students which can work this lecture, well, their number is also not limited. If I'm working with a group with different materials, then you can differentiate. For one group of students, you can show things which can be shown to them, and for the other group these materials can be prohibited. So things that I see, I can see everything, and it can be seen differently. So this is a standard Moodle approach which is applied. And another thing that we're faced, it's how it's better to place it. Well, it's understandable that I place it through a frame. Editing mode is being switched on. Then we take E-frame from YouTube. At the YouTube, we take the code. We edit this code so that it would fix the screen, because usually they give us small windows, and the only thing that we have to change here is the resolution. Not 320 by 375, but 720 by 405. These two parameters are applied in such a way so that lecture would be seen very well on the screen of our system. after this it's being imputed, and if this lecture is being directly broadcasted, and right now if I have shown you this through Zoom, then we simultaneously have practice in Zoom and direct broadcasting as well. But this lecture will immediately be seen. And another life hack that I would like to give you, and which is very useful, well, I would like to roll back. When you have lecture happening, it can be launched using this module for Moodle education. This is chat. Regularly we don't use it, but in this case it's very convenient. In which sense? We connect this chat, we can constantly bring it to the screen, and in case if you don't need feedback as a angry boss like I've been showing through the Zoom, then chat will be sufficient. And also in the chat you can pull it out on the screen, and of course you can communicate through chat and conduct this practice. That's all I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Igor Vladimirovich. It's very interesting addition to we have a question in the chat. We all say about inbuilding into the educational process how to monitor good or bad resources, how can we monitor competency, activate our activities, and drawing the result under our round table before the questions. I would like to speak about how is it possible to monitor, and whether it's possible to monitor the quality of educational process in a mixed learning model. It's a question which today worries all of us, and Igor Vladimirovich also have been raising this question, and in order to get an answer to this question, we will turn to Igor Nikolaevich Mikhaev. Igor Nikolaevich, can you tell us, please, how is it possible to monitor the quality of educational process? We cannot hear you really well. What about now? Is it louder? Is it okay? Yes, we can hear you well right now. Well, I will be trying to speak loud and clear. Show me my presentation, please. Yes, thank you. Well, of course, this question has been worrying us, first of all, before the pandemics and COVID, when we've been made to move into the remote learning. However, back then, we had information about online course education, first of all, for mass online courses, for Volga Tech and other universities which are located in our portal of the Open Education. But alongside with the analysis of what is happening at our courses in the situation of pandemics, we had to monitor this process, and really we have those processes in electronic courses. And the second thing, we wanted to evaluate the quality and different components of this process. So today's presentation is dedicated to this thing. Next slide, please. So these are the main questions or cases which made us to search for answers, how to provide good quality of educational processes in a mixed module. Next one, please. Which statistical information we can use for process monitoring of online learning and evaluation of the quality of educational process, and how can we give feedback to teachers, students to improve the quality of their results of the educational process. So the meaning is that even though we are using the mixed model, but we still understand that in pandemic conditions we have to use e-courses and we have to use online learning. And from this point of view, we've started thinking about how can we use that statistical information accumulated at e-courses, and how can we move the teacher to the fact that the teacher would organize the work of students separately. And for this we had to create this system which will analyze these the quality of this process with the creation of electronic courses. You see two portals, internal portal and external portal. And notwithstanding the fact that we've started this work at the external portal, right now we do understand that it has to be transferred to the internal educational portal. So we had to adopt our quality assessment model for the online courses. We had to adopt it for the mixed module. Next slide. So these are the questions for which we are searching the answers. And which percentage of the students is learning on the courses, which products had the most difficulties for them, how reliable and informative the diagnostical system, the scale of the courses, level of understanding of these courses, and the next slide, how can we evaluate the quality of the teacher's work and the educational process as well. Of course, we have a lot of problems, a lot of questions related to the fact, well, of course, there is a certain activity, this is wonderful, but what it tells us about? Well, we have good grades, but this is also not indicator of the fact that everything's okay with our courses. On one side, we have to evaluate how good is the quality when this process is built. It's not sufficiently to evaluate and nobody can say that this is extremely active work and all the materials are available. It's not the fact that the materials are available or not available, how good are the links, but how it helps to the students to move to the results and how this educational process is related to the end result. This is the most important question. Okay, let's move on. Next one. So we are registering these online courses, a lot of activities, and the result of the course by the eyes of the student. On one side, the statistics helps us to search for the questions to many answers to many questions, but it is being confirmed only by the feedback from the students. When student does confirm to some of our assumptions or contradicts to them. And we had to build a learning model with the usage of e-courses. We've been helped by the experience of our work in making online courses in our MOOCs. Then we have transferred them into spokes, small private online courses, which we are using for the mixed model and inside of these quarters. And we have transferred this model, which does not have to be connected to specific data on MOOCs, but sequence of learning has to be transferred, and it's transferable even to a mixed model. So we can use same approaches when we analyze how successfully a student moves in the direction of this trajectory, or in this line of the courses, how successful he is. And we can also add the time component, and we can think about how successful is he within this period of time. First of all, we have to analyze the involvement dynamics, because if the student is not going to learn, then results are not going to be shown. So from this point of view, we can analyze the average involvement, whether it drops or whether it grows or it keeps being stationary. We can also analyze active students. It's understandable that if this topic is interesting, then activity of the students will become greater, so the activity can grow. So it is very important for us to compare the average activity with resultativeness. Also, profile of activity of average listener is very interesting, because there are viewers who are really interested. They can sleep on those courses, or they can work and do something, and there are people who are passive. But it's very interesting to see on the average listener how often does he watch different resources, and from this point of view we can analyze which resources cause higher interest and which resources he just looks and has enough time to work with them without often turning to these resources, which is not really good moment when we've been working with some particular resources like that. Next slide, please. And everything faces resultativeness, so it is very important for us to see how successfully users cope with those objectives of the course, and we see how successful is resultativeness, whether it's growing, whether it's dropping, or it is stable. In different courses, this situation is different, so it is very important to look at these dynamics. And the next slide shows the comparison between the activity and resultativeness of course operations. You can see in which topics our listeners were very active, and we can evaluate their resultativeness, and we can look and compare. Also, it is an important moment is categorization or clusterization. In other words, you have to search for listeners which are not coping with educational load, and we should think about how can we follow the educational process and how can we organize our work with it. Well, right now we're working on the topic in order to clusterize those listeners and put them into separate groups, and the teacher should be involved about those listeners. And we can say a little bit later that, okay, let's take those courses and you have to work with them. If we analyze several tasks which lead to a cluster of unsuccessful listeners, and we also provide this information for the teacher in order to think why this becomes so difficult and some people cannot pass this exam. Okay, next one. Good. Here are some more questions to which we are still searching answers, irrespectively to the fact that grades could be very high. Sometimes we see that these grades are achieved by the fact that teacher just gives grades to students, and this is not often related to specific learning results, and they don't have system of adjustment. It's important for us to evaluate this diagnostical system of the course, evaluate the quality of the scale, and understand whether it gives certain levels of achievement, or everything is evenly distributed, and textual documents which have been perceived well compared to those which have not been perceived at all. Also, it is interesting to see which are the possible trajectories. Of course, in the framework of the formalized process and specific strict disciplines, maybe there are not too many trajectories, but honestly speaking, if we are thinking about creating possibility of those individual trajectories of learning inside of the courses, it will think that for students it's much simpler to work with these materials, and with this one it's difficult. If we will think that we need to adapt course to different levels of perception and to well, from this point of view, it's going to be interesting for us to see which trajectories are more often, or how the students are divided by these criteria. And a final question: how can we evaluate the quality of education on the courses? How can we build courses which can be used for stimulation? Next slide, please. From this point of view, we have learned to analyze. Well, not everything can be seen here. Something have disappeared, but nevertheless you can see we have learned to analyze results, learning results in courses, and we can say certain cognitive signs between different courses. From this point of view, we can see the main components of people educating in courses, their interdependency, and then we can understand whether it's a higher level importance process or less important importance process. For example, we have installed points, how many points the student has to accumulate in order to think that it was a successful passage of the course or excellent. Well, here's another example. In this structure, we can see different competency components. For example, in green color, you can see components related to programming. golden one related to programming, green one is related to mathematical preparation, and red and pink are related to statistics. In other words, you can also see how well he is advancing and which competencies have been formed in the full volume and which competencies are not available. Once again, for the formalized courses, maybe it's not as important because people perceive all the information, but on the other side, it's very important to build certain follow-up and to understand which students and which information has been perceived by them in order to work further on with them. We select following criteria in the learning process, and they will describe the quality of this process. First of all, this is informativeness. If the teacher has been given 5 grades to everybody, the informativeness of these lessons is 0, and the objectivity is not available. So this is the first indicator that we evaluate, and we understand that our experience shows that the threshold of normal informativity is that we are looking at how much cluster is divided and shared by the viewers, and then we follow these links and we're looking at these characteristics. Well, predictive analytics. This is an important topic. If your course is well known, very often, those points which are being accumulated in the beginning of the course, you can estimate them on how this person will graduate the university. If the productivity is very high, then it means that you will have an intense learning process. This student doesn't have those, and everything's going to be all right with him. And we also look at this description, and we think that a good quality course should be higher than 0.7. Easiness in perceiving the course. This is not a resulting completion, but an average. Successful completion of the course, not like how many people have completed, but the share of those who complete, but the average. The reliable system of course estimation shows the approval of the lessons for the course lesson installation. This is an important characteristic. If you have an objective or a task, or maybe you have a lot of tasks, but they are not related to each other, it means that you really depend on an error. So the student wasn't able to fulfill a certain objective or have under-fulfilled it, and he immediately loses his points. But if this knowledge is connected between itself, so then you can even compensate our errors in execution of one objectives for executing other tasks. And reliable system assessment for courses shows how good these stages are built, because the next tasks has to be related to the previous one. If not, and the course quality assessment can be based on all these criteria together, on all these indices, and maybe on some levels which can be installed later. Thank you very much. Next slide. Well, these are examples. You cannot see it pretty well, the evaluations of our courses. Well, you can see better here. So we evaluate informativeness, predictability, like easiness in perception, the threshold of success, the final precision of the forecast, of the end grades in a family, reliability of the system is being evaluated, and we also evaluate some other criteria which are close to this. Okay, next slide, please. Well, it's clear that evaluation and comparison of different courses between each other is not really a proper thing to do. However, we are using, first of all, these assessments in order for a teacher to see how the course is changing with time, in order for them to see that, yes, the situation is improving. In a given case, we see that his situation is much more informative, except for informativity. It's not always bad that informativity becomes worse. If it's on a level of 2 bits, it's okay. But you can also see that reliability have dropped, and final precision and lightness in the course perception as well. Okay, right now I would like to draw a line and tell you which feedback we would like to give to teachers. For the teachers, first of all, we provide so-called visualization of the course, monitoring of involvement, of the monitoring of grades, forecast of grading, how much in percentage ratio a student will graduate, the rating of the courses, and disassembly of the course rating about the main components. For the students, we provide visualization of the course mood, and I will tell you what it's all about, the current grade system, whether he was tested or not tested, and what's going to be the next test, and some recommendations. The next slide, please. The course visualization, course mode visualization is defined by three things. Number one, the level of involvement and activity of the work of the students on the online course. The second one is the good grades, how many people have good grades, and number three is the quality of system assessment. So if you have active work and you have good grades, but if the quality of analytical system is not really good informative representability and reliability, then your face will not be as beautiful as it's supposed to be, and as you can see it on the right side. The rating consists of two things. The rating of the course, as you could see, this is the mood of the course plus the questionnaire result, and in the result of this question we also are evaluating and we're specifying, well, the conceptuality, the quality of the content. We evaluate the efficiency of using the technologies, satisfaction. Next slide, please. This is what we are planning to implement in years' time. We will have the monitoring screen so the deans can watch on which courses everything's all right and which courses it's not okay, and which measures should be taken. Then recommendational systems for the teachers, which you have seen, very interesting presentation related with analysis. We're moving in a direction so that in these reports recommendations would also be provided, not just deciphering the rating, but also we could show how to improve it, and the system with automatic follow-up of the education of the students, which uses from one side dividing them by the categories and provides a certain feedback categorization on the basis of the system. For example, you can see yourself in the categories and your forecast is not very successful, so you have to reinforce your work in this particular direction. And for the teachers, in order for them to be helped, because you, for example, you have a problem and you have to work with this problematic topic. Next slide, please. We have course where we analyze all these indices and we tell you how we calculate them. If it's interesting to you, we can get signed at morepec.net, and we have a course which is called Education. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Igor Nikolaevich. It was really interesting presentation. When we have a lot of data assembled, we had this question not just in front of ourselves. When we collect data, what is to be done with this data? Which questions should we ask? Which questions can we get answers? Which points can we discuss? And those questions that you have tackled in your presentation, they truly are worrisome for many of us. And we all ask those questions. And maybe right now we have got some answers to at least few of them. What else could be done with them? And by joint efforts, we will be able to find these answers. Well, right now, I would like to go through questions in the chat. Igor Vladimirovich, question is to you. How many teachers have used the video lecture recordings instead of reading live, or video lectures are used as an addition to live lecture? Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Well, I can tell you. First of all, this is my new employment. I've just moved into this company and I've started doing this work. I have delivered new technologies. I've been working at Nizhny Novgorod Polytechnical University, so I've been working on this since 2006. What can I say? We have approximately 5-6 people who cut up this technology on the level of recording lectures in special audience. in Special Studio, but how many people have adopted it for themselves? Well, I posted a video, and I did have certain templates to record. Well, I didn't calculate how many people did it. Thank you very much, Igor Vladimirovich. One more question from the chat, and I've been speaking about it, and this is a question to Olga Evgenievna. Competency measurement in Moodle. It has been formulated. Can you tell us in more detail about measuring competencies in Moodle? Well, I don't know, but can you be brief and straight to the point? Straight to the point, that's understandable. Well, perhaps I've heard two questions to us. How do we work with people who owe us some classes? Because as of the 1st of September, we update our database of our students. And of course, we have courses which are provided for the current year. We upload new groups of people, and people who owe some homeworks, they are being assigned to those courses where students have some debts and unsubmitted homeworks, and their homeworks are being stored and they can continue their activities. And if the teacher wants to be tough on them, they can work with them on the rights of debtors in the current educational year. As for the competencies, if I properly understand the question was about those tests in competency matrix, which I've been speaking about in the framework of competencies. And out there, we have not used inbuilt Moodle capabilities because we have looked at module related with competency related approach, and we didn't really like it. So possibly right now it has noticeably improved, but right now we have not used it. Therefore, competencies were described with the usage of natural recommendations of goals, and matrix of competencies have been developed departments. Every competency was related with a certain number of disciplines, and the department was defining which competency is covered by which discipline, and then they've been discussing questions for testing. They took into consideration which competencies, which questions have to be prepared for them, and then during the preparation of the final test, the level of informativeness was defined very simple, because it was a test on remaining knowledge, the percentage of proper answers to a certain number of questions competency center. It gave us this particular level of going to competencies, which we've been providing in the report. But more than 50% are good results for the remaining knowledge, and then these levels can be corrected depending on what is the objective. Well, it's understandable that if we're testing people in the end of learning process, for example, if it's a final exam on a certain discipline, then the level of proper answers will be higher. If it's a remaining knowledge, then the level or percentage of good points received for each competency will be lower, because this is a remaining knowledge. I hope I did answer your questions, because about inbuilt capabilities of the Moodle, I have nothing to say about that. And we're working in our modules. Thank you very much, Olga Evgenievna. You have answered also the second question, that you used your competency matrix, or you have been following professional standards, or have you been using inbuilt competencies, inbuilt module competencies, Moodle competencies, or your own ones. So you have answered this question. Well, I have another question to Suren Valerievich. What is the labor intensity of creating competency models, if you can evaluate it in labor hours? Well, speaking about technical realization, it's gonna depend on a number of categories determined by us. We have to write the name of these sections. We'll have to define the competencies, and for each competency we can create the level of readiness. The more is the least, the less time we will introduce the system into the platform. When we have defined the categories of the models, it's just selection from the list. We select the competency, we select the level, and then we say that this is a prerequisite of the course, and the same thing is being done at the output. If we're speaking about the content work, we can work everlastingly, and you will never come to the victory, because even for a smallest piece like this, for the competency of a teacher, who uses digital technologies of digital education. Do you know how many copies we have broke down? So you can work everlastingly there. We cannot evaluate it just by this discussion. Okay, thank you very much, Soren Valerievich. Our authors, not about the competency models, they have evaluated labor intensity of creating video fragments and online courses. And labor intensity was evaluated in the following way. 1 minute of complete video content requires from 30 to 90 minutes of time to create 1 minute of video content. That's how they calculate their labor intensity. Well, basically, it's not too far away from the truth. Another question that was answered in the chat, and it was readdressed in the general chat: how can one acquire a module, auto-audit module? And we gave you the answer to this. Another question in the chat, and I see it's a question to me: which ideas of exchanging the experience and plugins? And we've looked at each one of us have a lot of things to share, and I think that if we'll get united, then we'll be able to show that Moodle is a very good platform and can well be used in Russian education process. So the idea is following. Right now we have all the contacts of all the participants of this round table. And once again I will copy letter. I will CC a letter from John with the invitation. Second of all, I would like to ask you, please join tomorrow's masterclass by Mary, which is going to happen at 2 p.m. And perhaps, if we'll have enough time after the masterclass, we will be able to discuss it in more detail. And if you're not against all the contacts of today's speakers, I will include in Google spreadsheet of tomorrow's masterclass. If you're against, please write that you don't want your name to be there. And we're all going to be connected and we can discuss out there. And speaking about the exchange, we have to cooperate closely, maybe without such a big community, but we have to discuss possibilities of plugin integration. We can show them in action and can test how these plugins do work. We can show our plugins. Sergei Sergeyevich will confirm to that. We can connect them. You can check them. You can see their possibilities of integration. In other words, relations on this practical level. On the practical level, how it works and what can be connected to your need. And we can move in the direction that we can create Moodle as a service, as a big platform solution for positioning services. And this should be a neutral Moodle. Something like John has been offering through a social network model or a developed model org, a Russian language, Russian speaking community. This is one of the best options, I think. And yes, I do agree with the fact that Moodle is the best platform, speaking about the mixed learning, and it allows us to integrate very well and implement a lot of different plugins. Well, right now I don't see any more questions in the chat. And in the external chat as well. So dear speakers, I think that we've had a fruitful day. And I do hope that you were able to get acquainted much closer. You've looked at each other and you have demonstrated your achievements to the external audiences as well. And once again, I would like to remind you that we need to get integrated and we need to come to tomorrow's masterclass and continue our networking more. So let's get united. Thank you very much.